In this video, I'm going to give you a practical demonstration of using DataVeil with an Oracle database running on a Linux server with Actifio. So obviously, to begin with, what we need to do is we need to have a Linux server. We need to unpack DataVeil onto it. So I've logged into my Linux server, and I actually have cheated a little bit here. I've already pre-installed DataVeil. Now, before you get excited here, the install process for DataVeil is literally unzipping it. So in my example, I unzipped it into /opt, and then I copied it into /opt, the zip file, and I unzipped it and I deleted the zip file, and I have DataVeil. That's as simple as it is. So there's really not a lot going on here from an install process. Now I've got the DataVeil folder. Once you go into the DataVeil folder, the only thing you need to do is cat that file, chmod nix, and run those 3 commands from this folder. Once you've done that, you're pretty well done. That's all you need to do from an install point of view. Now, I added a couple of folders here, log, to store my logs, and user files, to store my user files. You might want to put them somewhere else, but for the purposes of a simple demonstration, I popped them here. Now, the DataVeil GUI is an X11 app, and beautifully I've got PuTTY and Xmin, both of these open source, both of these free to download. So, and my PuTTY session already has, if I just show you here and go change settings, I just wanted to show you under SSH. Actually, I can't show you because it's a running session, but what we'll do, if I right click here and I go new sessions and I just load the config for my pre-save session, you can see under X11 I've got enable X11 forwarding. That's literally all you need to do. It's as simple as that. In fact, I will open that window because I'm going to need it in a moment. So from this window here, all we need to do is run that exe there. And what this will do, because I've got PuTTY with X11 and Xmin already installed, I will get the Linux GUI appearing here in my server, in my Windows server. How nice is that? Now, I've got DataVeil running, but what I need to do is connect to a database. Now, I've cheated a little bit here, and cheated by simply doing something before I started the video, which is I have my prod database running on Mel ANZ Aura, and I've done a mount. So I've already pre-mounted this mount to my Linux server. So the database is already there. And you can see why I opened a second window, because my first window was locked up with the X11 server, but I've got a second window open here. So ps-ef, and I'm going to grep for cprod. Actually, that's a rather silly thing to do. Let's grep for pmon, just to prove that the database is up and running and connectable. So we know it's connectable, so we now are going to try and connect to it using DataVeil. So now, the schema name is Scott. This is the same name as the user that I'm going to be logging in as. And I'm going to connect to the service name, which is cprod. Now, the host name and IP address, actually, I don't really need to put in, but I'm just going to add them here for completeness, because both of those things, host name, of course, if I type it wrong, it's really not going to work. There we go. That looks clean. And my username is Scott. Good old Scott. And if you ever know, the database password is Tiger. So, won't be the same on your one. I hit get schema, and it's now retrieving the schema from the database. Obviously, if I got the username and password wrong, I wouldn't get these. And what you can see here is that it's found a whole bunch of columns which we could potentially add to a project for the purposes of mounting. So you can see there's a project tab here and a DBMS tab. And at the moment, the project tab hasn't got much going on because we haven't marked anything as worth masking. Now, as in the behavior all great magicians, I'm going to open an existing project. Maybe that should be Great Cooks. So I'm not going to save that existing one. I'm going to open an existing project. And what you can see in this one, it's exactly the same database. But I've already done some masking. So if we go and have a look under the project, we can say that I've chosen a couple of columns, emp name and hire date. Now, if you notice, it's prompting me for a key. So I type in my key. That was the key I saved. Now, what you can see down the bottom here is that it's got those columns, gain all with a hire date, mer with a hire date. Now, if we right click and we go and open the column mask, what we can see is what did I choose to mask with. So you can see that for the e-name, the employee name, I said just change the family name and use one of 10,000 names in a deterministic fashion. Where with the hire date, what I did is I said randomize the date and time of the month, preserve the hour, preserve the minute, preserve the second, and actually it's also going to preserve the year because there's no rule for that. And again, do it deterministically. And obviously, if I go back into my DBMS, I could, and I have to reconnect, but I could add additional columns in this EMP, and you can see, there's obviously a whole bunch of obvious columns that I could add here to my project for the purposes of masking them. So I've just added that one there, and now you'll notice that it's now under here. Now it's manager. Now, what does manager look like? That's just a number. It's a bit boring, but we could definitely add a mask to it, and we could use it as a number sequence, and we could just simply say, just keep making the numbers go up. Now, there's probably a better mask than that, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to very quickly select a column, add it to the project, and then add a mask. Now, the final thing we need to do to set up, and there's obviously a lot of science here. I'm breezing through these at a phenomenal rate. But the final thing to do once I started to build my project is to go to the execution tab, and from the execution tab, do a preview run. This is really important. You want to do a preview run to validate that it's going to run when we go to automate it. This is part of my idea of basically doing sequential unit tests. Test component after component after component. So this is your first one. We're only going to apply this to 20 sample rows, which makes a lot of sense because we're not masking the whole database. So the preview run is now running, and once the preview run is finished, we'll be able to see if the masking is actually going to work. So what you can see here is that it's changed Gaynor to Pepper, Murr to Hutchinson, Mattern to Leach, Littles to Gott. It's gone into the manager ID and just literally changed it to a number. Probably not a good idea of example of masking because you can see that these were different ones. I probably should have used a shuffle instead. And the hire date, you can see that the year hasn't changed, but the month has. It's gone from the 6th of March to the 8th of January, 7th of January to the 22nd of April. So what we've demonstrated here is we've installed DataVeil, we've connected to DataVeil, we've connected to a mounted virtual copy of a database, we've built a project, we've edited a project, and we've done a preview run. At this point, if we save the project, and I'm going to close DataVeil, and we'll save the project, we can now run the project for real using batch mode. Now, this is absolutely critical because this is the only way the Actifio workflow will be able to actually run a mask. So to do this, we need a file in Act Scripts, and it has to be in this folder because that's the only folder that the workflow process looks in. I've already created the file here, dvmask.sh. Where do you get it from? GitHub. So let's have a quick look in dvmask.sh because it's actually pretty well already set up. Now, there's only a small portion of the file that you want to use, which is this portion here. You can see the first part of what I've highlighted has the path to DataVeil. Clearly, if you choose to unzip it somewhere else, this needs to change. Then you've got the project name. Now notice I've split the command up using backslashes. In the example in GitHub, I haven't done that. The reason is, it's a little bit, I won't say dangerous, but you need to use great care here because if you don't do it correctly with a space, backslash, and then nothing after each backslash, there cannot be any characters after the backslash. If there are, it will break the command up, and when you run the batch file, it just won't work, which is handy. It won't fail horribly, it just will fail. You can leave this as one long command, or you can split it up the way I have. Just be careful if you do so. So there's 5 things that need to be confirmed. As I said, the first is the path. If you installed in /op DataVeil like I did, don't need to change it. The next is your project. So you opened up DataVeil, you created a project. In that, it saved the connection data, and I'm going to cover that in a second. But you save the connection data, so all you need to do is point the batch file here at the project name. When you save the project, you save it with a key, which is a bit like it's a way to log into it. I optionally, you don't have to do this, but I like to have a log created every time I run DataVeil and the license file. Now it can, if you've logged in with the same user, it will be pre-licensed, but I recommend leave that in there pointed at your license file. Now notice there's a hashed out section here. I could actually delete that. This connection data is not needed. That's saved in the project in a hashed format. So this is not a good idea because it leaves everything in the clear, but we don't need to use it. So if these 5 things are correct, we're ready to try a manual run. Now, as I said, this script will be run by the workflow if we use the workflow to automate masking. But we can do this ad hoc. So I'm literally going to run dv mask. But if I run it like that, nothing happens. I need to tell it that we're running this as a test. Now, I will point out something. When we use the preview button in DataVeil itself, that was a preview. No masking occurs. When you run this script, even though I'm using the word test, it's not a real test. It's more like a full run in test mode. What we're actually doing is static, genuine masking. So if you're not happy with the result, unmount your virtual copy, mount a new one. But in this case, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to run. I'm going to run this command. This should start DataVeil in batch mode. You can see all my specifications. DataVeil has started. You can see that it's picked up that there's 3 columns that need to be masked. You can see that it's generating the masking, and you can see that it's exited with exit code 0. This is a perfect run. Now, you could now log into the database and display the database, and you'll see that those changes, which we saw in preview, have occurred. Now, the neat trick here is you did this manually. However, you've now validated that the script is ready to supply to a workflow. But interestingly, you've also done something else, which is ad hoc masking. This mount, that number 1 there, that mount is masked. I could unmount it and remount it to a developer server and give it to the developer. In other words, I, as a Actifio administrator, could do a virtual copy, log into DataVeil, do my masking, unmount from Actifio, remount to a developer, and the developer now has their copy. This is manual. We really want to do self-service and workflows, but I'm showing you one way I can do ad hoc masking. Okay, thanks for your time. Hopefully this has been useful to you.